Okay, well, we sort of did all of the main character routes already, which does mean the remainder of the episodes in this series might be a bit of an anticlimax, unless, of course, we happen to hit somebody's favorite character along the way. One of the issues is that getting the, like, tertiary route and then the quaternary— I'm not even sure if quaternary is the right word. We're reaching the limits of my understanding of the lexicon. Um, Getting those routes in one video still takes entirely too long. I mean, aside from just the fact that the processing can take 2 times the length of the video, and uploading often takes 4 to 5 times the length of the video, so I need to find a way to make routes organically interface. So I've decided for this one, we're gonna hit, Garma. I was gonna hit Ramba because Goof. I like Goof. I want to pilot Goof. But we're gonna hit Garma, and then, because, I mean, Aug is basically done. There's not a whole lot here. There might be nothing here left. But we still got some Titans. Now, Jared, of course, is the main Titans character as far as this game interprets it. But we still have Shirako, so I figured Garma and Shirako being the kind of B hero, villain, whatever routes for these things. I mean, that technically would fall to Char, because again, Haman is supposed to be the A route, but I don't know, I think Garma and Shirako fit. Call it some intuition. Yes, no matter who does this mission, we end up playing the Gundam Mark II, because we be stealing the Gundam.
All hands launching. What's wrong? You coming with us? That's no mobile suit. That's some kind of Federation monster.
Yeah, and then I find out that there is actually a limited edition version of the Master Grade Unicorn Plan B, which I honestly think might look cooler than the regular full armor Unicorn. I mean, honestly, in a perfect world, I'd have, like, the Banshee Norn, and the Fennex, and the Unicorn full armor, and the Unicorn full armor Plan B, but I mean, the expense alone, I mean, that's like 40k levels of emptying one's bank account. And it's not that I'm not that much of a model fan, or even not that much of a Gundam fan, it's just that I ain't got that kind of cash. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, I found out recently that, like, there was a Gundam Extreme Versus 2, and of course I wouldn't know this intuitively, because apparently we Westerners just aren't Japanese enough for Gundam Extreme to be localized. I mean, that hasn't stopped people from making that happen, but still, like, really? I mean, unless I'm just egregiously misinformed, but I swear that, like, the first Extreme Versus was Japanese only, and they probably did the same thing with the second. I don't know, Alliance vs. Zaft and Alliance vs. Zaft 2 was also Japanese only, so yeah, we don't get all the good shit. I'm a bit sour about that. I mean, we got Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam, but I swear that this wasn't actually localized. They just used the audio clips from the anime, like, archived or whatever, because that's what it sounds like to me. That's how we end up with Char and Amuro using their voices from both the 1 Year War and the thing, because they didn't do any re-recording, it's just the archived sound files.
Alright, Garma unit returning to base.
So even this got a little hacked together during the localization. I mean, I don't understand why it doesn't cross the pond. I mean, there's certainly enough, you know, Gundam fanboys, I would think, here, so but why? Why not?
Garma unit launch.
There's a whole market there that's just you're not realizing it.
Garma unit launch.
Yeah, it would figure that, like, of the gunpla kits that I actually got, I tend to get, like, my first ones to boot, I get the most finicky ones in existence. The full armor, you know, Verka Thunderbolt, and the full armor Unicorn. Because Unicorn just likes to explode into parts on a good day if you try to touch it. Now, I can't speak to that because I think I built the legs and the chest and I didn't actually finish it. And I think I have mentioned that before, that it's still on runners. I mean, that's the thing. I wanted to get all new stuff in order to do that because my cutters rusted over, my X-Acto knife rusted over, and I found out that if I really wanted to do it right, I would need, like, ultrafine sandpaper and a bunch of other stuff that I don't have. I mean, it's plastic. It's not like it's going anywhere. No, I want to reload.
I'm not about to let myself be pulled in by the Earth's gravity. I'll let the reinforcements take care of the rest.
You know, the one redeeming aspect about this beam rifle in this game is that you can reload it because it does not hit very hard, and it has basically no tracking. So like a lot of the machine guns in this game, you just spam it. Just spam it. Honestly, by that regard, it's most akin to the Gundam ground type and the Gym ground type's machine guns, because those are also reloadable weapons that basically thrive on spam.
All right, Garma unit returning to base.
Invade Jaburo. This is just a good opportunity to use the Black Gundam.
Don't laugh, Sean. The men are watching.
Because I think... I'm not sure
Garma unit
what Garm is using from the other characters' routes, but I've sort of... We're so far off the main route at this point that it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna do what piques my interest, and whatever imagined canosity that exists here has become entirely hypothetical. Because especially I find with fans of, say, Japanese works, like anime and Japanese video games, there's often a lot of that, like, lore Nazi-type bullshit. Because I've literally gotten that in my Resident Evil 6 LP, where I think three different people commented on the fact that as a fun, like, camp headcanon joke, because the agent in Ada's route is just a nameless, throwaway, whatever character, we decided to liven it up by saying he's Hunk. Now, of course, we know he's not Hunk, because if he was, there'd be so much more fanfare relating to that. But we decided, you know, this guy's, he's got no personality, he's got nothing, but we can impart that to him by just thinking in our heads, in our minds, that he is this character. So he became Hunk, and there's corrections. Fucking corrections in the comments of people like, he's not Hunk. And it's like, I know he's not Hunk, it's a joke. Like I said, lore Nazis, you know? Can't get creative in the least with the canon. You gotta follow it exactly. And it's a weird interpretation to apply that to this game as well, because this whole route, none of this is canon. We're in a hypothetical timeline that was made by the game developers, not the showrunners, so where's the canon? But I know that, again, you're gonna have some, like, lore Nazi who's gonna be like, oh, well, you know, from this character's route, they use this machine, but yet you use that machine in this route, which was wrong. And, I mean, this is all besides the point, because for starters, we're not watching a series with an established, you know, thing. It's a video game. It's a video game. You're meant to play it, you're meant to sort of do it your own way and have fun with it. And don't think I'm casting flack at the weebs for that, because there's plenty of Star Wars and Star Trek fanboys that are also lore Nazis that basically like, no, that happened in episode 6, you know. And it's like, oh, okay, sure, sure.
All right, Garma unit returning to base.
I mean, an encyclopedic knowledge of things is impressive, but, I mean, are we not meant to pursue things that improve the sum of human happiness? Whose happiness are you improving by making callouts like that, really?
Launch.
I mean, I correct people's grammar, but there's two reasons for that. One, having language function is important for a lot of things. We as human beings work much better when we understand each other, and grammatical errors can lead to misunderstandings. We don't want our lives to turn into an episode of Three's Company. Furthermore, there's also the fact that people think that I do it as a know-it-all sort of thing, like, oh, you made it stupid and got the word wrong. It's a compulsion. And you can blame my grandmother for, you know, being one of these English must be spoken correctly type of people who just drilled it into my head that, you know, you're gonna do it right and you're gonna like it.
You're not getting away.
Oh, so we got Baran and Rosamia.
It's not over yet.
I've still got my sword. Oh, you think you can outduel me? Having two swords does not make up for lack of skill. Like that samurai who won a duel with a stick. Because, of course, he got a stick that was like a pole arm in length, so it's like almost twice the height that he is. And when the other samurai came at him, before they got in range to cut him down, he basically mashed all their brains. Oh, the grand human ambition in warfare, to be able to hit the other guy from such a range that he can't hit you. Which was basically the point Laserpig made about, oh, the reformists not understanding, like, why, other things, like, why things like the A-10 are outdated. Because, I mean, sure, it's good for morale, because, you know, big brr, you know, the whole thing, and when it was developed, it worked fine, because the technology wasn't quite there yet. I mean, it sort of was, but expensive. But it's like, yeah, we're past the point of, like, mid-air dogfight. And the funny part is that we have an instance of those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, because this has happened before. And granted, we had a bit of a false start, but you'd think we would have learned. Because transitioning from World War I to World War II, it's important to remember that in World War I, aviation was young. Like, the first plane had only flown 2-3 decades prior, and all of a sudden we've got these planes with, you know, fixed machine guns and mobile machine guns, and they're fighting Zeppelins, and they're dropping little grenades, because they were grenades and flechettes, because those planes were wood and canvas and piano wire. And of course, they weren't very powerful. So you had this problem of climb. Actually, you know what? I want the battle points. You have this problem of climb because for the plane to gain altitude, it has to lose velocity. And there's also, you know, air resistance that's bleeding velocity out, right? So the engine has to be able to overpower that, and the engines on these planes would have been shit for a motorcycle engine by modern standards. So they couldn't really climb, and if they dove, in excess of recoverable velocity, or they didn't climb after a dive, that velocity they lost was just gone. Because they couldn't readily climb again. But, you know, with the bi-wing configuration, the whole business, they were extremely sharp in terms of their flat maneuvering. They could turn in like a practical half-spin. So naturally, the air-to-air combat was, you know, fought in kind of a flat plane. You didn't involve a whole lot of diving and climbing. Now, not a whole lot does not mean there wasn't any. There was indeed plenty when applicable.
Victory is ours.
Now, a lot of lessons, a lot of things were sort of experimental in World War I. Blitzkrieg tactics. Tanks. World War I was very much a shakedown period for military operations for the rest of that century. Bear in mind, we aren't in that century anymore, so a lot of those principles no longer apply. I mean, not if you listen to the reformists, but then again, what do they know? Point is that in World War II, a lot of these guys were like reading the memoirs or whatever of World War I pilots, and they had this two erroneous lessons were gained from this. The first was the idea that they should get into a turning battle with their enemy, because these pilots were literally just illustrating zero creativity and like, oh, well, that's how the pilots in World War I did it, that's how we'll do it. The thing is, aircraft performance had come a long way since then, and now the newer aircraft were often far better conditioned for taking fights into the vertical. I mean, especially North American aircraft, stuff like the Lightning, could not outmaneuver the Japanese sort of still wood-constructed planes, but they could outclimb them because they had more powerful engines. And the thing is, they were literally fighting the enemy on terms that were favorable to them because they were getting into a turning war.
Victory is ours.
So it took some more innovative heads to basically point out to these guys that, like, look, stop getting into turning fights with them, take the fight into the vertical. But this comes to the second sensibility that was kind of, you know, erroneous, hilariously so, was this idea that, like, yeah, but if you take the fight into the vertical and you dive away without confirming your kill, you know, how are you going to mark that on your scoreboard? You need to confirm your kill. And it's like, guys, this isn't a fucking game, it's a war. I mean, I'm sure you like your scoreboard with all the little tick marks on your plane indicating just how much of a badass pilot you are, but we're trying to have fewer of our guys die and more of their guys die. Confirming your kills is irrelevant. It is completely and utterly pointless. Pull your heads out of your asses. Now, why was it so important in World War I? Well, these guys were rock stars. They were at the forefront of technology, the forefront of warfare. Flight was a new thing. There were no rules. They were pioneers. I mean, they might as well have been astronauts for the kind of pomp and deference they got. Of course they're gonna, you know, confirm their kills and keep scorecards, purely for the ego of it, naturally. You also have a lot of this, you know, nobility in combat and all of that garbage from the previous eras that was basically rendered void in World War I, if it ever really mattered in the first place.
Times have changed. You guys are antiques now.
And so we have this moment where we were using the tactics of a previous generation to fight a modern war, and we paid for it. And the thing was that, like, Vietnam was a fuck-up altogether. Like, wholesale, that was a goddamn problem. Because aside from the fact that, you know, we lost and we fought the war incorrectly because we didn't understand that the enemy wasn't just going to be, like, blasted out of existence or anything like that, there was the issue that you have these missiles, these guided rockets, intended for thermonuclear war, shooting down enemy rockets and all of that, or specifically enemy, you know, thermonuclear weapons. There we go. Okay. And they've been kind of hastily refitted into, you know, air-to-air missiles, which is an entirely different ballgame. You can't just downscale them. Nuclear missiles are massive metal structures that are going to be superimposed on a clear blue sky with hot rocket thrusters, and you're reconfiguring your interceptor missiles into something that have to track maneuvering possibly low-flying aircraft. It was set up to fail to begin with. But of course, the arms manufacturers were pushing a product. Buy our new guided missiles, they'll render, gunfighting obsolete. Now today they have. They have. Face it, it's just the reality of the situation. But everybody claims the fact that, oh, well, we bought into this notion that guns were obsolete before and we paid for it. And it's like, well, yes, because you bought into marketing hype. The companies that made them told you that, oh, well, why use guns? Use our rockets instead. Pay us. But now battlefields are fought, beyond visual range. And we also have this notion of cracking stealth technology. Who has the better stealth technology? The battlefield, the game has changed. And as before, some people are just being slow to defend, slow to accept that, slow to adjust to it. It kind of ties into a point that I make that, generally the older someone gets, the less adaptive. The problem is a lot of the people in charge tend to be, up there. So, of course, adaptation is not exactly in their forte. Besides, figures of authority have always been fundamentally resistant to change, because one of the things that could change is that they might no longer be in authority.
I don't want to be laughed at for my promotion because of my father's influence.
My god, Mauer, hold still! Like a fucking jackrabbit. There we go! And you Marasai interlopers aren't helping matters either. There, you get a head Vulcan for being a snot. But yeah, the argument that, like, the F-35 can't do what the A-10 does, it's like, yes, but we don't need to do what the A-10 does anymore. Now, mind you, I still do consider it an impressive fit of engineering, but it has become... I can acknowledge the fact that it has become a white elephant. Because, again, it was very good at doing a job that needed to be done, and that there wasn't a better option for a long time ago. It's sort of reached that age where maybe it's time that it is taken off the board, replaced with something fancier and newer. Because again, why a big cannon? I mean, aside from the cannon's general inaccuracy and inability to penetrate armor, which I did know about, but you would think volume of fire would make up for it. It was the lack of accuracy that I was unfamiliar with. You'd figure accuracy by volume of fire, but I don't know, maybe 30mm is a little too big for a plane. I mean, sure, they got Bofors on the Spooky and so forth, but that's not ripping, like, thousands of rounds a minute. You can maybe achieve greater accuracy when you got more of a boom, boom, boom in your rate of fire. Besides, even the Spooky is starting to get, or the Spectre, or whatever the, like, modern one is. Even that's only useful for attacking, like, primitive insurgents, because anybody with a shoulder-portable anti-air weapon can just blow that shit out of the sky with zero difficulty. To some extent, though, this kind of ties into, again, like, the nuclear problem. Because we don't fight big shooting wars against, advanced technological enemies anymore, and the reason for that, naturally, is because, if we were to do that, we'd always run the risk of things getting nuclear. And so, without a war to kind of test combat theories and shake down designs and strategies, we're not quite sure what will work or what won't work, or at least we don't have that practical confidence of having used it in action, because we haven't fought, like, big major wars. And that's kind of the thing, is that, well, that's maybe not a bad thing. I mean, we're constantly under threat of nuclear annihilation because of nuclear deterrence and mutually assured destruction. Perhaps it's a small favor that could, make it so that we're not at risk of fighting major wars or having enemies at our shores. I mean, people have speculated that there probably won't be such a thing as a space war because the logistics behind it would be so incredibly difficult to accommodate for that you might as well just not even try. Thing is, if people can fight, they will. That's just the reality of human existence. So somebody will invent space torpedoes, or there'll be marine boardings and space pirates, and doesn't matter how hard the logistics are, somebody will get a funny idea.
Take that. Yeah, take that.
Because I tried working out in my head, what would differentiate human cooperation from human competition, and availability and accessibility of resources is the point, and I think I've gone over this, but perhaps that's my age showing that I can't quite remember. But yes, if a goal requires the cooperation of multiple individuals to achieve, then people will work together, because there's nothing in it if you don't. You can't achieve the goal. Granted, the notion of what it will take to achieve the goal is often speculative. Some people believe that they're going to need help, other people think that they can get it all on their own.
I'll kill anyone who wants to make the sky fall.
Oh, it's that Psycho Gundam. Well, I can't do anything until she morphs. Well, I do have rockets, but I'm still targeted by her. Oh, well, wasn't that perfectly timed? But there's also the notion that ultimately people will compete if there aren't enough resources to go around. And I often find that, like, that's kind of a point of fighting wars, is that oftentimes, if they're not fought over, you know, tribal affinity or hatred, but it comes down to the issue of there isn't enough to go around, and the strong will survive and the weak will die. You know, Darwinism in action. Now, it's not like Darwinism doesn't serve a purpose, but it's difficult to apply natural principles to human behavior, because even though we are still very much animals living on this planet, we have radically altered the way in which we function in our environment. I mean, if it's possible, you could say we've become a meta-contextual species. I mean, other life forms alter the environment to suit their needs, but I suppose we became one of these meta-contextual things when we started harnessing power that is not naturally available, or we started going into space. Because apart from what we possibly have brought with us, nothing else has achieved that goal. Nothing has left the atmosphere, escaped the gravity well. Where the hell is my backup? I am getting blasted by these two. Jared leaving? Did he time out? Well, I've got recover, and with no allies around, I don't need to worry about it getting used on some idiot. Ugh. You know, if I can connect with the big gun, it deals massive damage, but all she has to do is hit the block, and it... Better luck using the missiles, but that high angle of attack means that they basically don't hit anything unless you fire it while in the transformed state. And I have so limited... This is just not going well. I've never liked the Super Gundam in this game. Like, on paper, it'd be perfect. But it isn't. It just doesn't work. Survive that somehow. And I'm out of charge. Oh, no, 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 no. Why is there a teammate now? He's gonna sponge my recover. I fucking know it.
This is the end.
Oh, ho, 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 ho. You no touchy. You no touchy. No touchy. No. Ooh. And of course that does nothing. I mean, that was as likely as anything to happen. Come on.
I am a son of the Zabi family, and I will go down in glory.
Well, I had to use a recover, but that's why I equipped it. I'm probably not going to use the Super Gundam from here on out, because it's more likely to get me killed than anything else, and that's not even mentioning the friendly fire that it frequently inflicts.
Returning to base.
Take over the Federation Assembly at Dakar. In Dakar. Yeah, no more Super Gundam. We're done with that. That's over. I mean, presumably at some point I'm going to have to upgrade the Mark II if I decide sticking with it in Garma's route.
All hands launching.
I mean, I'm still critical of the F-35 being this hilariously expensive piece of hardware. Granted, the cutting edge usually is, but Boeing's design, because I was soft on that design, and I know that it had major problems, but in many ways it was a far more revolutionary technological take than the F-35 even was, because the whole lift fan thing might have been a unique implementation, but fundamentally it shared a lot of spiritual aspects in common with both the Harrier and that Russian aircraft that had, like, lift jets in the front. Like, it's kind of like a hybrid of those two. Now, sure, Boeing was just ripping off the Harrier altogether with what they dubbed, like, the Monica, or more commonly known as the Flying Hippo, because it looks fucking goofy. But they were going to make a single-piece wing entirely out of, like, a carbon composite material that would have made the aircraft cheaper to produce and substantially lighter, like going back to the maneuverability of, like, wooden aircraft in World War I and II. And if it could have been made to work, which their problem wasn't with stresses or anything like that, it was with manufacture. If it could have been made to work, it could have revolutionized how we build fighter aircraft today, and shit canned. Why? Because, first of all, Lockheed is much more, you know, friendly with defense selectors and so forth. And, because, I mean, that was part of it, like, Lockheed blew its budget before the project had even, like, built a functioning aircraft, and they were just allowed to exceed that budget thing. I mean, people wonder why the final plane was so fucking expensive. I mean, if Boeing had been given that extra time and allowed to jump the budget like Lockheed was, they might have actually finished the aircraft to specification. But no, they were held to a different standard. And that's what pisses me off, because sure, maybe the Boeing would have been shit, but we don't get a chance to know, because Lockheed was given special favor and Boeing wasn't. And that's bullshit. Boeing definitely would have had to work on that intake, though, because, yeah, that giant hippo mouth intake, God help us. I mean, how is that not going to be detectable by radar? You'd have to baffle the ever-loving fuck out of it. Thing is, making that point about the F-35 stealth profile, it's like, yeah, but to carry a reasonable bomb payload, it has to carry it externally, which means that that basically cuts its stealth profile in half.
You're kidding me.
I mean, I don't know why they opt. Oh, Mark II versus Mark II in the same color scheme. Yeah, let's thin out these new type use variable machines before we yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a thing that we're gonna do. I mean, that'll probably win the match though, because their reinforcement gauge doesn't have much left. Could have gone for Armoro, but it's getting knocked around there too much. Just end it. Just end it. Phew.
All right, Garma unit returning to base.
Okay, no fancy instructions for this one. That's nice.
Garma unit launch. All hands launching.
I mean, another point of the fact that we're sort of beyond visual range warfare, especially when it comes to like navy or aviation, comes down to the fact that World War I was sort of the beginning of logistics winning fights, not the individual. He who can, you know, produce bigger weapons faster and supply them with more ammunition wins. And yet, a lot of this mindset of like, we need the thing with the big gun that is nigh indestructible. I mean, even tanks' days are probably numbered. I mean, people have suggested it, like, what is to stop a nation with, like, ready access to the resource from just filling the skies over a besieged city with quadcopters with anti-tank mines strapped to their bellies that can just lock onto a vehicle and then just dive on it and explode it? Because you could totally do that. You know, some real Half-Life level improvisational warfare strategies. And in that type of environment, what in the hell's a tank gonna do? You'd literally need skeet shooters following the tank around to shoot down these drones before they dive on you. I mean, that's the hilarity with how they're penning these fucking Russian tanks with their advanced missile interception and decoy systems of just not locking onto the tank and aiming in front of it so that the missile's automatic post-launch target acquisition acquires the tank at such an extreme angle that the tank itself can't detect the missile approaching. Granted, the funny part is that it's a creative way to use something that was never actually designed for that. The post-launch target acquisition was intended as a reliability-improving feature, and the top-down attack mode was intended to exploit an enemy's soft armor, but you put these things together with a little ad hoc creativity, and you have a way of bypassing Russian anti-tank missile defense. Oh, and that also ties down to a key point of warfare, is that, like, it's not all procedure, it's not all reliability. You gotta have some ingenuity. Let's not forget that raid on that German-occupied French shipyard that they needed to keep their big battleship deployed. And a bunch of 20-somethings in Britain, like, just organized a raid and a strategy and pulled it off and basically denied a big section of the waters to that German battleship, freeing it up for the Brits. And they did it with, like, a mixture of wooden boats, an old, out-of-date ship that was, like, repainted to look more German. I mean, it's literally, like, popsicle sticks and duct tape. And it was a decisive victory. That may have been a contributing factor in them winning the war, because some guy just, like, had a brain fart and was genius enough to turn it into a win. And that's my point, because people don't often equate military with smarts. Because you figure soldier, I want you to bash your head against that wall repeatedly. Oh, sir, yes, sir! Ow! 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 And it's like, well, it can be like that, don't get me wrong. But if it is, you probably have a military that sucks. You need guys to, like, under the heat of combat, under pressure, to be capable of thinking for a moment, like, maybe we could do this a different way, a smarter way, a better way. I mean, the reason all of that procedure exists in the first place is just because in the heat of combat, you're not really going to have the cognition to be able to be clever about it. But if you talk to like special forces, and of course these are the sort of exceptional, the best of the best, their whole job is coming up with clever solutions in some of the most dire circumstances imaginable. That's the job. And the real problem is just that we don't have more of that. I mean, I've been accused in multiplayer games of using tactics which are... cheap is often the term used. It's cheap tactics. I have a fucking Fortnite video where I won a fucking Battle Royale match after spending 15 out of the 20 minutes that match took hiding in a hay bale. Now, I of course highlight the fact that that's a problem with Battle Royales in general, because that sort of tactic would work once if you were in like a classical deathmatch map or like a round-based... Oh, it's only in a Battle Royale where a tactic like that can be abused so fully. Because the issue is, say you're setting up an ambush, and you spring the trap, and you eliminate a player. The trouble is, they're not coming back. It's not like they can warn another player. So inevitably what happens is that you literally just wait for customers to start queuing up to get ambushed. And the reason you can't do that in a deathmatch map is that ultimately the guy you killed is going to be back, and if he happens to go by that area, he's not going to fall for it again in all likelihood. You also have tighter, more claustrophobic maps where it's a lot harder to find some place to hunker down that isn't likely to be noticed. But yeah, I've made the point that the problem with Battle Royales is that people don't play them properly often. They play them like it's a deathmatch battle, but it's a survival thing, and ultimately one of the best strategies for survival is the sort of Dark Forest strategy. Just don't get seen in the first place, don't get detected. You know, wait till it's just you and somebody else, and then creep that guy from the shadows and win. Is it fun? No, it's not even fun when you do it, because sure, you get the dub, but you basically spend half the match sitting on your hands. And there's no guarantee that it'll necessarily give you a dub in the first place. You could spend 15 minutes sitting on your hands and walk away with nothing. That's stupid. It's why I'm critical of Battle Royales as a gaming genre. They have a lot of things that are unfun. Now, it's fine when they go wacky. The kind of, you know, Tab G thing, where it's just like, we have no MLG prospects, this is meant to be just totally out there, go nuts. That works for a Battle Royale. But when you have something where you intend for, like, an honest, competitive atmosphere, yeah, don't, like... Battle Royale is just terrible for that. The only reason it got into MLG in the first place is because it was so popular and people would want to watch it. It's purely a marketing thing. Because yeah, 15 minutes inside of a hay bale out of like 20, 25 minutes in the match, and it was a dub. Because nobody even realized we were there until it was the last duo, and me and ZK, we just wiped them out. I have a whole series called Broken Royale where I basically win by being a camping scumbag piece of shit. Not my words. Age and cunning will always triumph over youth and fast reflexes. Those are my words. Hell, I used to win by using false towers, which was hilarious, by the way. So what I do is I build like a 1x1x3 tower, damage it deliberately, and then hide myself either nearby or up the tower in between the roof and the ceiling. Wait for players to, like, come around to, like, use it as cover to heal up or something, and then just drop in on them and wipe them out. You know, bait and switch. I'd set a trap! And I would get shit for that, because, you know, you cheap scumbag. It's like, hey, don't blame me because I'm smart and you're a fucking cretin. In gaming, if it can be done, it will be done. Ask the Halo 2 players about the noob combo. Sure, it was cheap as fuck, but people still did it. Okay, now I chose the Gelgoog for this excursion, Because if I end up losing an arm because I have to use recover, which seems likely now, I'll still be able to use my rifle, which I would not be able to do if I was using the Gundam Mark II. My problem is I just don't want to sink points into these, because I have a funny feeling we're going to get something cooler when we do the other route. And the problem is that I don't want to blow points into one mobile suit only to be given a better mobile suit. This is fine.
Key point is I need to let my beam rifle recharge anyway, so yeah, no, this works. Once I get a fully charged beam rifle, I'll close the gap and then we can finish her. Or she'll transform early, that works for me too. Oh, she's not too tanky, but I don't have a lot of beam charge to work with, that's the problem. And I'm already out. But there's ample cover on this map. I mean, that's my bread and butter in a lot of games. I am the sneaky fucker. Like, more than just stealth, right? If there's a way that I can outwit my opponent, I'm gonna do it. That's actually quite bad for me. Now, there's no one for her to shoot but me. And it is a Psycho Gundam, so with enough distance, those beams travel so slow, I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And I could have taken a nice clean shot there, but the lock-on decided to extreme an angle. Thank you for that. This is entertaining, isn't it? Safe strategy for me right now. The human player would never, like, unmorph, because they know that I'm in a bad way, and that I'm going to be keeping my distance, and that in that state my beam rifle is useless. But the AI will periodically just change around, because it doesn't know any better. And the same thing happened with Destroy Gundam in Alliance vs. Zap 2, because in its Destroy mode, it is completely beam-proof and has that bullshit barrel rolling attack. I will try to close the gap and force her to transform back once I have a full beam charge, but we're not quite there yet. There we go. I'm on the shield side. Has so little boost as well. My god, it's death by 1,000 pinpricks. Ugh. I'm on the shield side again. Oh, fantastic. Too steep an angle to fire in passing, were you? Don't mind me just limping into victory. This is only her I have to worry about. I'd go more aggressive if I had a recover, but I don't. Oh, no, not that close. No. That hit the shield, and I'm still low on charge. But the AI knows to strafe on the side that puts the shield between me and the target. Honestly, I didn't want to bring the Zaku because, of course, that would be an even lower tier machine than this, but if I had brought the Zaku with the bazooka, this might have gone substantially easier. Because I could take pot shots at it without having to worry about what mode it's in, because the thing would do what it needs to do. Oh! Oh my god! Now stop moving. Oh, come on, just a few more hits would do it.
Oh, that took a hot minute. You're probably going to get privy to something that I occasionally have to do on this channel of accelerating the footage so it doesn't take forever.
All right, Garma unit.
Also known as chipmunk mode. Good stuff. He escapes the front. Yeah, but they blow up whatever and then... Yeah, we've been here before. Well, it has to end at some point.